From the University of Illinois' Krannert Center for the Performing Arts in Urbana, the Lincoln Academy of Illinois presents the 61st Annual Convocation and Investiture of Laureates. Since its founding in 1964, the nonpartisan, not-for-profit Lincoln Academy of Illinois has recognized over 350 extraordinary people, citizens of Illinois by birth or residence, in the spirit of that most famous Illinoisan, Abraham Lincoln. The Lincoln Academy of Illinois is governed by a board of regents and general trustees, appointed by the governor of Illinois, who also serves as the Academy's president. Each year, the laureates of the Lincoln Academy are presented with the state's highest honor for individual achievement, the Order of Lincoln Medallion, in formal ceremonies held across the state of Illinois. The Lincoln Academy also honors the outstanding senior students at Illinois colleges and universities as student laureates of the Academy.
We say that we honor for a purpose here in the Lincoln Academy. The purpose is that we pick a small representative sample of great achievers that have great connections to the state of Illinois each year, and we honor them. And we listen to their stories, and we record those stories. We make them available to future generations of Illinoisans that are come along, because Illinois can help produce great achieving people that make a difference in the world. And we have some of those people here with us tonight. Tonight we add the names of 6 remarkable individuals to our distinguished roster of Lincoln Laureates: Bonnie Blair, Sandra Cisneros, Jeanne Gang, Dr. Janice Jackson, Marin, Julieanna Richardson. Please join me in watching the video introduction of our first laureate, Bonnie Blair.
Bonnie Blair, Olympic legend, 5-time gold medalist, and the most highly decorated American woman in Winter Olympic history. Bonnie Blair first dominated on the ice and now continues to do so in her philanthropic work. A world record-holding speed skater, her historic victories and international accolades are too numerous to count. Bonnie has proudly represented our state and our nation as an Olympic torchbearer and flag bearer. Standing forever alongside the best in the world, she was inducted into the United States Olympic Hall of Fame in 2004. A dedicated community partner outside the arena, Bonnie is passionate about her work with the Alzheimer's Association, American Brain Tumor Association, and the Leukemia Association. She inspires others as a motivational speaker and extends her positive influence to young athletes and her sport, including through both the Dash Project, Incorporated, developing athletes for speed skating high performance, and is an active member of the Petite National Ice Center's Board of Directors.
There is a story that goes that when my mom was about to give birth to me, my dad took my other siblings to an ice rink, and at that point, husbands really weren't allowed in the delivery room. So they called the ice rink and told my dad and my brothers and sisters over the loudspeaker that another girl, Blair, speed skater, had been added to the family. So I for sure, I think, was destined to be in an ice rink. You know, for me growing up in the sport, I don't remember anything different, but I always remembered looking forward to going to the ice rink, looking forward to going to the competitions. You know, it wasn't anything where my parents had to tell me twice to go get my skates. I would usually already have them ready to go before they asked me.
Bonnie Blair's godmother, Canadian Olympic silver medalist Kathy Priestner, was an early influence.
She kind of really took me under her wing, and it was really, Kathy that kind of steered me in the direction of more long track speed skating versus just the short track speed skating. So, we were very lucky to have somebody of her caliber come to our club, come work with our athletes, and especially work for me and kind of guide me in the right direction.
At age 19, Blair made her Olympic debut in Sarajevo in 1984.
You're kind of like looking around, taking it all in and thinking, oh my gosh, like I'm at the Olympics. And thinking too, like how many people are watching this at home, because as a kid, I remembered watching the Olympics and Eric Heiden in Lake Placid and what that was like as a kid on a couch, right? So I'm envisioning maybe some other kid watching this on the couch.
She won her first gold medal in the 500 meter in the 1988 Calgary Games in world record time.
As I was about to step up onto the podium to receive my medal, I looked into the audience and I saw my family. And my family didn't have seats right in front of the award podium, so they kind of were scattered about. And, I saw my sister Angela, and, she was crying, and my sister Susie, just a big, huge grin on her face. I found my brother Rob, high-fiving his best friend. I saw my sister Mary. She was screaming, yelling, just going absolutely bananas. And then I saw my mom, and she still looked scared to death as if I was still racing. So to be able to look at my family members, see all those different emotions, like that's exactly what it felt like to win an Olympic gold medal. There's nothing quite like it. I'm glad to have videos to go back and kind of relive that. It was a very special moment, and to be able to share that with my family, share that with my teammates, and the United States of America. It's for sure something I'm very proud of.
Blair continued to dominate the sport at the 1992 Winter Olympics in Albertville, where she won gold medals in the 500 and 1,000 meter races.
Having that 4 years between games, gives you time to really be more on a 4-year game plan, like with a coach and looking at things. But we would always have world championships every year. We would have World Cup competitions. So there's still a lot of those big competitions getting you ready for that ultimate. And we would kind of take one of those competitions for us. Back at that point in time, it was the World Sprint Championships. That would be my Olympic Games on that season.
Bonnie Blair earned her final gold medals in the 500 and 1,000 meter competitions in 1994 in Lillehammer.
It's not always having the medal ceremonies and hearing the national anthem. All those steps that are also challenging help to shape you as well. And I'm just kind of lucky I had it all. And like I said, with family, coaching, teammates, and a sport that's given so much to my life, I've felt that by me also now trying to give back in other different ways, whether it's to charities, whether it's to my sport, doing different things that helped me get to where I was. Maybe now I can help others get to where they need to get to for their ultimate. As I said, it was a large family that I grew up with, and as you heard of the different charities that I find myself frequenting with, but it's because those charities touched my life. I had a sister that had leukemia, a brother with a brain tumor, and my mom suffered with dementia. And so working with the Alzheimer's Association in the Wisconsin area, they even created a Blair's Cares Award that is honor in my mom's memory to somebody who goes above and beyond volunteerism to be the best that they can be to help the organization, which leads me to the final part. And what I've been doing more as of late is with our Dash speed skating group. And my husband and I, who's here with me tonight, also a 4-time Olympian, We've started a speed skating group with, yes, the idea of getting more numbers into our sport that's kind of dwindling given there's so many opportunities out there for kids. But we learned so much through sport, and our sport has given us so much in our life. Helping kids to maybe get off their phones and be more physically active, helping that physical literacy for kids to get them more active, get them out there, and then maybe, who knows, maybe one of them will find their path on the Olympic Games, and my husband and I will know that we were part of that journey. So like I said, very honored to be here with you this evening, and congratulations to all of you guys as well. So thank you very much.
Sandra Cisneros wrote her first poem at only 10 years old. By the time she was 28, her first novel, The House on Mango Street, was published. Since then, it has joined the ranks of American classics with more than 8 million copies sold. Sandra's work has been recognized with numerous awards, including the National Medal of Arts, the Ruth Lilly Poetry Prize, and most recently, the Ivan Sandroff Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Book Critics Circle. True to her own words, quote, "You can never have too much sky," she continues to reach for new heights. Beyond her renowned work as an author, she's collaborated with composer Derek Bermel on the operatic adaptation of The House on Mango Street, which premieres at the Glimmerglass Festival this summer. Her talents impacted young students from her early career as a teacher and counselor at Latino Youth High School in Chicago, and she continues to influence others through her writing, which is incorporated into educational programs around the world, from middle schools to high schools and universities.
I'm one of those people that writes in what I call little buttons. You know, I'll take maybe a little bit of dialogue or description or title. It's all disjointed. I don't write from left to right or top to bottom. I just write in little buttons. And sometimes if I don't have a button, a sequin. And I put them all together and write them as they come to me. And then I rearrange them and see what I need to bridge. That's how House was written, in this completely non-linear way. It's how I write even now.
Internationally acclaimed author Sandra Cisneros draws deeply from her childhood experience growing up in her hometown of Chicago while traveling back and forth to her family's ancestral home in Mexico.
There's no way I should be a writer coming from the neighborhoods I come from. I come from neighborhoods that police were scared to go into. But my father had this sense of being better than our neighbors. You know, he was middle class. He always thought we were better than anyone because we were Mexican. Well, of course. So this sense of arrogance saved us from the racism of children or instructors, because we knew who we were. We had seen the pyramids. We had been to the country of our ancestors. And we had this sense of like, yeah, we may be living in these ghetto, but that's just temporary. We always had this sense of like, you know, we're just here temporarily. It's maybe a little bit of a mistake and we'll get by. So this, my mom's spirit, this spirit of like, you know, underdog, and my dad's arrogance, a good combination for children who are growing up in perhaps neighborhoods where maybe your teachers don't believe in you, and maybe your neighbors don't believe in you, and maybe the mayor doesn't believe in you. But our parents were a great combination together.
Cisneros wrote her first poem in 6th grade when a visit to the Chicago Public Library unlocked her dream of becoming an author.
And then this little light bulb went off in my brain, and I could see a book with the spine having my name on it. And I think it's very important for children at that age to really plant a seed in their third eye of what they want. And I knew I wanted my name on the spine of a book. I was going to become an author. It was the first time that I knew it.
Cisneros studied at Loyola and the University of Iowa's Writers Program, where she experienced a wake-up moment about her bicultural heritage.
When I realized my class difference from my classmates, and that was essential. First, it drove me to be ashamed and want to leave and quit the program. But after I thought about it, it allowed me to maybe flip that depression into rage and realize, why have I never seen my home written about with love? I have never, in all the years I've been in school, read anything about my community written about with love. And that made me angry. And so that anger spurred me to stay in the program, and even though I was in the poetry program, to write about my neighborhood from a place of love. I did that alongside my thesis, but it forced me to find my voice. What could I write about that no one else could write about? And that was key in the start of The House on Mango Street, my first novel.
She began writing The House on Mango Street at age 21 and finished it 7 years later. In the novel, her protagonist, Esperanza, wants her house to be as clean as paper before the poem.
I think about it even now. It's probably my favorite line in the whole book. I say, but I wrote it the way I write poetry. And I think when we're writing things from love, from puro amor y amor puro, we really do open a channel to our highest self. So sometimes when I look at the book, I think, well, where did that come from? And I really feel like I'm just a medium for la luz, the light. And when we work from pure love, we open that channel. When we work with revenge or our small self, it closes it. So that book came from pure love. It was love for my community, love for my family, love for my students. And I didn't expect any fame or fortune from the book. The best I hoped for was maybe a nice blurb from the writers that I admired.
As a teacher, counselor, arts administrator, and visiting writer, Cisneros continues to travel the world to inspire others to find their artistic voice.
I feel that the work that I've done has taught me one thing for sure. Well, many things I've learned, but one thing for sure, and that is what we create with pure love, on behalf of those we love, with no personal agenda, siempre sale bonito. It will always turn out well. And I think that's a law of the universe, that whatever we do selflessly, with no ego involved, and if we do it for those we love, it's always going to turn out well. That's a life lesson I learned. I was thinking today, how did I get here? Because I wake up every day thinking, how did I get so lucky? Why aren't there more little girls who come from the poorest neighborhoods in Chicago writing books? Why aren't there books in the library? And I have to give thanks to my mother, the daughter of those grandparents who were pushed out of Mexico during the Mexican Civil War. My grandparents could not read nor write, and they did not learn how to read nor write until they were elderly. So my mother never finished the 9th grade, but she yearned for art and education, and every Sunday demanded that my father take us to the museums in Chicago. At that time, the museums were free on the day that working class people didn't have to go to work, and that made all the difference. And so now I know her spirit is here tonight along with my father. They're so very proud that House on Mango Street is being adapted to be an opera. I hope it means that children from neighborhoods like mine will be attending opera and enjoying opera and appreciating opera. And I'm just so grateful, especially the great honor of meeting one of the true brave men in our time in history. So even if I hadn't gotten the award, it's an honor for me tonight to meet Governor Pritzker. Thank you.
Jeanne Gang, a powerful force and internationally recognized architect, Jeanne Gang and her designs have transformed cities and communities across the world, including in her own hometown of Chicago. As the founding partner of Studio Gang, Jeanne creates new and exciting connections between people and the environment through architectural and urban design. She is renowned for projects that include the Richard Gilder Center for Science, Education, and Innovation at the American Museum of Natural History in New York, the reimagined Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts in Little Rock, and the University of Chicago's John W. Boyer Center in Paris. She and her firm are also designing a new United States Embassy in Brasilia, Stanford University's Sustainability Commons in Palo Alto, and an expansion of the Clinton Presidential Library in Little Rock. In addition to her celebrated built work, Jeanne is a lauded scholar and author. Her work has been exhibited by major cultural institutions across the globe. These impressive accomplishments have distinguished her as a leading architect of her generation.
At first, I thought I would go into engineering like my dad, but then, my work, everything at school, I was really much more about art making and making. I was always like the kid making the tree house for friends to play in, and somehow architecture, I got lucky to find it because it really married up my, kind of engineering math brain with my artistic side. And it's just a perfect combination for that. I got lucky because I found architecture very early, and I've never looked back.
Belvedere native Jeanne Gang earned her bachelor's degree in architecture at the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana and her master's from Harvard.
What I really loved in architecture at Illinois was we learned a lot about sustainability, but it wasn't called that then, but really how to make a building work with the environment. A lot of my teachers from Illinois, they were like hippie generation, so it was great. But when I got out and started practicing, I just did not see that. No one was doing that. And so I think going back to school at Harvard and then coming out and being able to create my own practice the way I wanted to, I was able to get back to my roots of the environment and making buildings that are easy on the environment and made of natural materials.
She draws many of her ideas from the natural world in what she calls animal intelligence.
I take a lot of inspiration from ecology, and the ecology is actually, not just the study of specific species, it's how they relate to each other and their habitat. And so that is a perfect metaphor for architecture because we're setting up relationships between people, setting the stage for them to interact, and then also connecting that to the environment around them, whether it's, protection from the environment or connecting to it to understand it better. And I think that's just how I see architecture, not as like solitary objects, but they're all very connected to their environments.
From nature walks to skyscrapers, Studio Gang's diverse designs reflect its founders' core values of living lighter on the planet and how their designs will affect the people who use them on a daily basis.
I wasn't following the typical model. I just was using architecture as a medium to just be in the world, create things and do things that I was passionate about. And so that led to the type of projects that I was attracted to, the types of organizations that I like to work with. Oftentimes organizations that are trying to reinvent themselves and using design to help do that form of the identity of someone, of something. And that started to create this portfolio of projects that's rather unusual because it's not all one type. There's small community buildings, there's pavilions that connect to nature, there are museums and hotels and tall buildings all the way through different types of buildings, and that's just a reflection of my curiosity, my passion for creating space and connecting into the environment.
Gang is inspiring a new generation of architects at Harvard in developing their own thinking.
What I focus on for teaching with young students is for them to develop positions. So it doesn't necessarily mean a style. I think that will come, but to really research in the beginning of the project and understand if the project has a potential to make some change happen, and what is that change that they want it to be.
Jeanne Gang's current work is focused on the environment and sustainability.
I'm really interested in reducing carbon emissions, and so I think one of the real key things is how can we better reuse some existing buildings that we have, but not just preserve them as they are, but how can they have more capacity added onto them? And I think that's where we are right now with environment, because it's so important to reduce these carbon emissions, that working with existing buildings, which typically save 50 to 70% of carbon emissions in the embodied carbon, that is one of the things that I'm really drilling down on, and and in the future designing buildings that are maybe reversible in their use. So, for so long in the 20th century especially, we were very specific about, here's an office building, this is a house. But now, can buildings change their use over time so that they're more adaptable and more flexible? And that is really important.
But when I started my own practice, I really wanted to do it in my own way. And it was really with a focus on communities and sustainability. And originally, I started out in my apartment actually on Lincoln Avenue in Chicago. And I worked, got up in the morning and worked all day on architecture. So I can really say I was like living and breathing and dreaming architecture at that point. And along the way, though, I was joined by so many talented people. And with architecture, you don't just do it alone. So I had collaborators and partners, and eventually my life partner, Mark Schendel, who joined me and supported all my passions and ambitions and my way of working. And so I wouldn't be here, without them. Thank you, Governor Pritzker, Chancellor Ron Spears, the regents and rectors and trustees of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois for this amazing honor. And I also want to thank Ethel Holliday and Julie Gunn for nominating me. And congratulations to my fellow laureates. It's really a privilege to be in the company of such incredible, accomplished individuals like you.
Janice K. Jackson's lifelong service to Illinois and the city of Chicago exemplifies her instrumental accomplishments as a leader and educator. Throughout her career, she has sought continuous improvements in our educational system, passionately advocating for students and their futures. As principal of Al Rabi High School, Janice led the school to one of Chicago's lowest dropout rates. She continued her outstanding work at George Westinghouse College Prep before taking a leadership-level role in the Chicago Public Schools Administration. Her vision and foresight propelled her to the highest levels as she became the Chief Education Officer and the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools, the third largest school district in the nation. Following her remarkable 22-year career in the Chicago Public Schools, Janice became CEO of Hope Chicago, a public-private partnership supporting scholarships for Chicago students. She also serves on numerous boards where she continues to focus her strategic vision on improving academic outcomes.
I am a lifelong resident of Chicago, born and raised. That's a fact I'm incredibly proud of. I grew up on the south side of Chicago with my parents. My mother and father both worked in the transportation industry. That's how they met. My mom was a dispatcher, my dad was a cab driver. And they eventually went on to open their own family business. And I think that the values that I embody as a professional really came from them. They were big believers in the American dream, whatever that meant to them. We were striving towards that. They prioritized education. So I know I have a love for learning, but I don't think I even had a choice but to love learning because of the family that I grew up in.
As a child, Janice Jackson dreamed of pursuing a higher education and becoming a college professor. Little did she know that in a relatively few short years, she would end up leading one of the nation's largest public school systems.
But I've always loved history, and that was my dream. But of course, I had to be practical, and my dad was like, you're gonna get a job, so get a teaching certificate, and while you go out and do all that learning, you can be teaching as you work to get a doctorate. Then I started teaching in Chicago public schools, where I also attended from kindergarten through high school. And I saw a very different side of the district than what I experienced. You know, we all went to our neighborhood elementary school, but our parents exercised choice before they even knew that term. They wanted to make sure we got in gifted and magnet programs to accelerate our learning. And so when I worked in a neighborhood high school, it was the first time that I really saw up close and personal kind of the two-tiered system of education that many people experience in our city. And I quickly changed my focus. While I always loved history, I taught history as a high school teacher for almost 5 years. I really got the bug around systemic change, and that's what made me go into leadership. So I started out as a principal at the tender age of 26 and became the superintendent, as you know, by 40.
Jackson secured a $500,000 grant from the Gates Foundation to launch Al Raby High School.
Al Raby High School is located in the East Garfield Park community. It's named after Albert Raby, a former civil rights activist and teacher. And when we named the school, we were very intentional about that because we wanted to embody the principles that Al Raby embodied as a man and as an educator. But as you can imagine, I was about 22 or 23 when me and a group of teachers went after that Gates funding. And a few things came out of that. First, I got my first lesson in Chicago politics because before we even wrote a single word in a proposal, one of the veteran teachers told me they already know who they're going to pick. And she was right. But what happened as a result of that is we went to look for another space, and that's how I ended up on the West Side. So we opened Al Raby in the fall of 2004 with community support in a community that was really interested in alternative learning options for their students.
Dr. Jackson rose quickly through the ranks in the Chicago public school system, serving as network chief before becoming superintendent in 2017.
I'm very proud of the academic outcomes that we achieved in CPS. Our district is really a beacon for what reform looks like in education. If you go back even to the 1980s when we instituted local school councils, where it was a real push to formalize parent involvement, over the course of 30 years, we saw dramatic improvements in graduation rates. When I was a student in CPS, about half of the seniors would graduate on time. That number is now at 83%. We saw rise in test scores. Now, with that said, there's still a lot of challenges, but we've been able to institute programs like Preschool for All, early college programming, things to really strengthen the experience that students have in our school system. And that's something I'm proud of. I often tell people there is no magic bullet to solve the issues that plague a large urban school system. But with the right leadership, you can make sustained progress over time and land where we have landed, which is more students graduating, more students going to college, and more students having a shot at the American dream.
Today, Dr. Janice Jackson serves as CEO of Hope Chicago, a public-private partnership that helps students and their families achieve their dreams through education.
Hope Chicago pays for students full cost of attending college, full cost, books, fees, laptops, including a small living stipend. We also give their parents an opportunity to go back. So when we went into these 5 high schools in some of Chicago's most challenged areas where people weren't making the investments, we saw the enrollment rate for college go from 51% to over 80% in 3 years. So it really turns on this narrative that people don't want more. They do. There are just too many barriers, and I think it's incumbent upon us in government to remove those barriers so people have more access. I want to thank the Lincoln Academy for this honor. It is truly an honor to be here today amongst this esteemed group of laureates here today. I cannot tell you how overwhelmed and overjoyed I am to share in this accomplishment. It's also an honor to be here to talk about the amazing work that I've been able to do in Chicago for a couple of decades. It started with the work in Chicago Public Schools, which I'm incredibly proud of, whether that was starting a school, Al Raby High School, at the tender age of 26. Most people didn't believe me when I sought out that opportunity, but it was something that grew up and that burned inside of me when I worked at a neighborhood high school and saw that the students in that school didn't get the same opportunities that I was afforded in the Gifted and Magnet program, and that my siblings were afforded in different Gifted and Magnet programs across the city. That one injustice really propelled me to do decades of work, not only in CPS, leading to higher graduation rates and student outcomes, but to do the incredible work that I get to do today at Hope Chicago, where we have sent over 2,000 students and families to colleges across Illinois debt-free. So thank you for this incredible award. And I'm going to get off the stage. Thank you.
Emmy Award-winning reporter and esteemed journalist Carol Marin spent her distinguished career keeping the public informed on critical news involving local and statewide government, public policy, public corruption, organized crime, and politics. Her reporting and journalistic endeavors earned her numerous esteemed recognitions, including 3 George Foster Peabody Awards, 2 National Emmys, 2 Alfred I. DuPont Columbia Awards, and the Gracie Award. Carol also co-founded and formed an independent documentary company, Marine Corps Productions, with Don Mosley. The dynamic duo and business partners located their company at DePaul University in Chicago, where they also launched the Center for Journalism Integrity and Excellence. Marin continues her powerful work as founding director of the center, preparing the next generation of journalists for careers in investigative reporting.
I really wanted to do hard news, politics, and in Illinois, politics, prisons, corruption, and organized crime all seem to live in the same family.
Palatine, Illinois native Carol Marin says her love for the news business started at the family kitchen table.
I grew up in a house where my father was a Republican and a fallen away Baptist, and my mother was a devout Catholic and Democrat. Blue collar, quite correct, but what little money we had, some of it went to every newspaper that Chicago produced every day. The Daily News, the American, the Tribune, the Sun-Times, and the National Observer once a week. And then we would fight over first who got the Daily News, because Mike Royko was the one we wanted to read always, my dad and I. So growing up, I grew up in a family that talked politics, thought about religion, thought about civics, and loved words.
Marin was on the debate team at the University of Illinois and landed her first job in TV journalism in Knoxville.
I didn't want to do fashion, makeup, or beauty, so I brought the Klan on in full dress and asked them how they could exist in this time and place. And I was a little too newsy for a morning talk show that they thought was a women's talk show. So the general manager said, send her up to the newsroom. And the rest was my life in television.
Her groundbreaking career in Chicago began in 1978 at WMAQ-TV.
I started as a weekend anchor and a reporter, and what I said to WMAQ was, I'm not giving up my reporting, because without the reporting, anchoring means nothing. And they said, okay. And that was right around the time that the Pontiac prison riot happened outside of Chicago, and I went to the desk and I said, I want to cover that. And the guy on the desk said, oh, how could I possibly explain that to your husband that I sent you to a riot? And I said, you better send me to the riot or there's going to be one here. And I covered the Pontiac Brothers prison riot. I covered any number of stories about Illinois prisons.
Her professional integrity always came first. She made her own headlines when her station tried to put Jerry Springer on set to do commentary.
They'd put him on the set next to Ron Majors and me. Well, our newscast was a respected newscast. We were serious people, and we thought we did serious work. Putting Springer on the set was like kind of a crazy carnival, and we protested. Management said, nope, you're going to do it, and you, Carol, are going to introduce him the first night. And I went home and I met with my lawyer, agent, my family, and I said, I can't do it, because if I do it, I'll never unring that bell.
At CBS, Marin provided riveting eyewitness coverage of the 9/11 terrorist attacks.
I raced down to the trade centers just as the first tower melted before my eyes. There are thousands of people running this way, but you know, in news, we're the people who run that way. You know, you run to it because that's what we do and that's what we're proud of doing. And so I got on West Street in the debris field of the first tower, and a firefighter turned and yelled at me and said, because all of a sudden you could feel the ground move, the second tower was coming down. I turned, I ran, I fell. He picked me up by the waist, put me on my feet, threw me against another building which had a granite overhang, covered my body with his body. I've said this many times and I always choke. I could feel his heart beating against my backbone. The second tower came down and it went from daylight to pitch black, because in the air all around us were the pieces of people and buildings and things.
Carol Marin returned to Chicago to report for WMAQ, WTTW, and the Chicago Sun-Times before her retirement in 2020. As founder of the Center for Journalism Integrity and Excellence at DePaul University, she remains committed to training the next generation of reporters.
Every generation's a little different, and some of our students will come to us and say, you know, I want to tell my story through my lens. And you say, that's great. And I'm not your mother, so I'm not going to tell you you can't. But in our advanced reporting class, you can't. You're going to tell somebody else's story. You're going to hear their voice. And you're not going to worry whether you agree with them or not. You're going to try to hear them and also try to find the voices that surround their voice that might inform a kind of context. So you're going to learn the tools of journalism, and some of our students go, you know, objectivity's failed value, it's dead. And I go, yeah, I get that point of view, but we're going to really work hard to do it as fairly and factually as we can. And that's what true journalists do. And then if you want to move on to opinion, you want to move on to editorial writing, you want to do commentary, God bless you. But first of all, you got to know how to tell a story. As a child of Illinois, to be named a Lincoln Laureate has powerful meaning, because Abraham Lincoln arguably was our greatest president, presided over a terrible time in this country, and did so with grace and courage and wisdom. We in the world of news are living in a terrible time right now, testing everything we've got. For journalists, it requires speaking truth to power every time, every time. Because for publishers, editors, reporters, there is fierce pressure to break the public trust, to dim or distort or fail to report the truth. I will use this Medal of Lincoln as fuel, as my true north for all the challenges that lie ahead. And I thank the Lincoln Academy and all of you from the bottom of my heart.
Julieanna L. Richardson, tirelessly dedicating her time to preserving oral histories, founder and executive director of The History Makers, Julieanna L. Richardson demonstrates that history is always in the making. With a background in theater, law, and communications, Julieanna excels in multiple fields and stood out early in her career, creating her own production company, SCTN Teleproductions, which managed 3 local cable channels and served as the local production extension for C-SPAN. Then, without formal training or funding, she embarked on a momentous path, leading her to archive and compile over 3,500 oral histories from African Americans. Making history herself, the United States Library of Congress became the permanent repository for her collection, as only its second major African American oral history collection. Through her groundbreaking work, Julieanna has received several honorary degrees and was recognized as a prominent Chicagoan with the Chicago History Museum's John Hope Franklin Making History Award. She continues her extraordinary leadership at the History Makers.
Julieanna Richardson's passion for discovering the untold stories of African American history began with her paternal great-grandfather.
I grew up with Papa, who was my great-grandfather, and it was my duty when he came, because he would visit his children, to get him a glass of ice water, and we would whisper as kids, Papa was born a slave. And we, it's not like we even knew what that was, but we knew that it was something maybe ominous, that people had come through. But the concept, of slavery was not a concept that I knew as a 5-year-old, but I was speaking that he, on hushed terms, that he had been born a slave.
Richardson double majored in theater and American Studies at Brandeis University.
You don't understand sometimes watershed moments until you experience the feeling of belonging and having a history, and that came when I was a sophomore year at Brandeis University, when I am doing research on the Harlem Renaissance. And I'm learning all these things. And the song, this is the thing, the day that I'm listening to the song, I'm Just Wild About Harry, I knew that song, and I knew it as a song of Harry Truman. I did not know that it was written by a Black songwriting team of noble Sonia B. Blake. And that was like,
Richardson picked up her tape recorder and started doing her first oral history interviews of notable African Americans.
So I'm interviewing Lee Whipper, who was the oldest living Black actor at the time, and I'm interviewing tap dancer Honey Coles and historian John Henrik Clark and Butterfly McQueen, who had starred in Gone with the Wind. And she had that voice that she had was not a put on. And so those interviews had really a transformative effect on me.
A graduate of Harvard Law School, Richardson worked as a corporate lawyer in Chicago before launching her own cable shopping networks.
And I start taking over management of these local cable channels. And I tell my ethnic producers, my ministers and everything, everybody can do their own thing, but we're going to have quality and we're going to have standards. And so I ran that, and then the city took over those channels, and I'm really confused at that point. And I don't know what I want to do. And I say, out of this period of really confusion emerges what becomes my life passion.
The History Makers was born from a concept paper she wrote at her kitchen table in 1999.
I did get a small grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities, and I gathered a group of scholars. And I was asking them, and they helped me define who a historianchor would be, as someone who had made significant accomplishments in their lives. But they also asked me to add a second category, those people who had significant knowledge about the time periods, movements, and important parts of American history. So those were the two, the category. But in terms of a list, they were it was somewhat random. And I'm covering all these categories. So I started in Chicago that first year interviewing Negro baseball league players, Pullman Porters, and Tuskegee Airmen.
Over the last quarter century, the History Makers Project has collected nearly 4,000 African American oral history interviews from all around the country.
I'm proud to say that we have just finished our first capital campaign, 20 million raised. We've raised in the last 25, this year is our 25th anniversary, and we've raised over probably $38 million. We've done interviews in 451 cities and towns across the United States, and in 2012, the Library of Congress became our permanent repository.
As long as there are eyes to see and ears to hear, Julieanna Richardson will continue collecting African American oral histories to more fully report and preserve their often untold stories in American history.
Because of the work that the University of Illinois did in partnership with us and Carnegie Mellon, our digital archive is in 205 colleges and universities and public libraries around the United States. That would never have happened. So I think that there are no mistakes. This is like an amazing coming together, and I'm incredibly honored because when I came into Chicago, I'm surrounded by Black history. I don't think there would be any other place in the United States that this project could have come out of. So I'm incredibly proud of this, my adopted city and my adopted state. I love the work that I do. I believe that this was my calling and my passion, and I feel really guided by my enslaved ancestors each and every day. I think often, and I thought this morning, about the Negro spiritual. My enslaved ancestors, I believe they guide my steps every day. There's a song that we say in the Black community, I do not feel no waist tired. It goes like this: I've come too far from where I started from. No one told me that the world would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far. I don't believe he brought me this far. I don't believe that God would bring me this far to leave me. And even though we live in these most tumultuous of times, I believe we will see our way through. I thank the Academy for acknowledging my work, and I thank Illinois for making it possible.
I'm simply going to say that I am proud to have a governor who will speak the truth and who will speak to injustice and who is supportive of the people of his state and of the Lincoln Academy. I give you Governor Pritzker.
Our new class of Lincoln Laureates is simply outstanding. Bonnie Blair, Sandra Cisneros, Jeanne Gang, Dr. Janice K. Jackson, Carol Marin, Julieanna Richardson. Just outstanding. How proud are you to be Illinoisans tonight? Each of them has brought honor to our state through their achievements, their investiture into the Order of Lincoln is a recognition of their lasting impact, not just within their fields, but on behalf of their communities, of our state, and our entire nation. This group truly showcases the extraordinary range of talent among Lincoln Laureates: architecture, poetry, speed skating, journalism, education, historical preservation. You all have made your mark and made Illinois proud. Your professional achievements are outstanding, but that alone is not why you are being recognized tonight. It is your outstanding and upstanding moral character, the high regard that you are held in, and your exemplary public service that has earned you a place among the Order of Lincoln. Our nation's greatest president, and the namesake, of course, of this great organization, eloquently and elegantly summarized it. Let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith, let us, to the end, dare to do our duty as we understand it. So congratulations to the 2025 class of Lincoln Laureates. Thank you all for keeping the faith, and in doing so, bestowing pride upon the people of the land of Lincoln.